North Carolina's Republican-led legislature has overridden a veto from the state's Democratic governor on a bill that will ban almost all abortions after 12 weeks. The veto override passed on a razor-thin margin after, as we discussed Tuesday night, recently elected Democratic State Representative Tricia Cotham flipped parties last month, giving Republicans a supermajority in the state House, meaning veto-proof. All of this is despite the fact that recent polling of North Carolina voters on abortion shows a clear majority, 57%, support either keeping abortion laws the same or making them less restrictive. Another poll found that 54% opposed the requirements in the new abortion ban that just passed. And North Carolina's ban is actually far less restrictive than some other states' new laws, which brings up a larger point about Republican leaders across the country who are taking some extreme, unpopular positions with more extremist candidates out of touch with independents who will decide many elections, particularly in purple states, moving forward. It's something even Fox News' Sean Hannity, who is one of the most important conservatives in the country, recognized last night, using examples like failed gubernatorial candidate Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania.
I happen to be pro-life. Many of our viewers watching tonight are also pro-life, but many are not. And when a Republican candidate in a swing state like Pennsylvania makes banning abortion a central focus of their campaign without any exceptions, for example, for rape, incest, or the life of the mother, well, that Republican, politically speaking, is probably going to lose badly and drag the entire party down with them.
He also said Republicans need to embrace early and mail-in voting and stop demonizing it because it can determine the outcome of elections.
The RNC, they should learn, they should adopt, they should organize, they should even outperform these efforts of the Democratic Party. They should have aggressive early voting campaigns, aggressive mail voting campaigns, or Republicans, frankly, are screwed. They're just going to lose. Now, in many states, Republicans have been reluctant. They have been resistant to vote early and vote by mail.
Hannity didn't pretend to be an objective journalist. He's long been transparent that he is serving as a voice about the Republican Party, which I respect. And he's also objectively making a lot of sense when he ripped into Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel.
But you're behind the eight ball. That's my point.
No, we are not behind the eight ball. I'm saying we need more money. We need resources. Of course we do. And I will say the Democrats are outraising us 100% because they invest in process. And I talk to voters and donors all the time. They say, I want to see who the candidate is. I'm going to wait to see who the nominee is. You have to invest in both the process and the nominee to get it done.
And you can't pick a candidate that doesn't make exceptions for rape, incest of the mother's life in a state like Pennsylvania.
And it's clear at least one Republican candidate is listening, Donald Trump, who has said recently that he supports exceptions for the life of the mother, rape, and incest, and has indicated that he thinks the kind of 6-week ban recently signed into law in Florida is too harsh, though he hasn't committed to exactly what he thinks would be a reasonable restriction. Now Ron DeSantis trying to outflank Trump for not taking a more extreme approach on abortion.
As a Florida resident, he didn't give an answer about would you have signed the heartbeat bill that Florida did, that had all the exceptions that people talk about. The legislature put it in. I signed the bill. I was proud to do it. He won't answer whether he would sign it or not.
But it seems many Republicans may not be ready to take Sean Hannity's advice. But don't they want to win? Joining me now, Liz Mair. She served as online communications director at the RNC. Thanks so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. So what do you make of Sean Hannity's argument here?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, the thing that Sean and everybody else needs to remember is that the RNC, particularly in presidential politics, but filtering right the way down, when you're talking about a primary process, the RNC has to remain neutral. It just has to. So I think what Sean is trying to do here a little bit is try to get the RNC to move in a direction that could be more helpful, more favorable to what we think is his preferred candidate, Donald Trump. That's not what they exist to do. And the RNC chair needs to be accountable to her membership, which is 168 people, not Sean Hannity.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.